There's a moment I think every guy has experienced at least once, maybe more times than he's counted, where he looks up and catches a woman staring at him. Not a glance, not an accidental sweep of the room, an actual sustained look, and then she turns away, or she holds it for just a second too long before breaking it, and then nothing. She doesn't come over, she doesn't say anything. The moment dissolves, and you're left standing there wondering what just happened, or more honestly, wondering if anything happened at all. Whether you imagined it, whether it meant something, whether you were supposed to do something and just missed your window. I want to talk about that moment today because I think it's one of the most misread dynamics in early attraction. And most of the advice out there either oversimplifies it or skips past the part that actually matters, which is what's going on inside her when she's doing it. What's running through her mind in those few seconds? Why she looked in the first place and why she didn't move after. Because those two things, the stare and the stillness, they're not contradictions. They actually make complete sense once you understand how attraction tends to work for women at that initial pre conversation stage. And that's exactly what we're getting into today. One, she's attracted, but fear runs the show. Now, here's the thing, this is mostly true in cases where she finds you attractive at the very least. Believe it or not, women are just as terrified of rejection as men are. Maybe even more so in certain situations. Because for a lot of women, putting yourself out there openly and getting turned down doesn't just sting the ego. It feels like an exposure, like you revealed something about yourself that you can't take back. And that fear is incredibly real, even when the attraction is just as real sitting right alongside it. So, when she's staring at you and you're feeling that pull of something in the air between you, understand that on her end, there may genuinely be a version of that same pull, and it's being held in place by something she can't quite push past in that moment. It's not indifference, it's not disinterest, it's the exact opposite of both those things. Actually, attraction without a sense of safety produces a very specific kind of paralysis. And that paralysis looks from the outside like a woman who noticed you and then did absolutely nothing about it. What she's running through in those seconds is something like, what if I go over there and he's not interested? What if I misread this? What if I make it weird and now I have to see him again in this same space and it's uncomfortable? Women are running those scenarios in real time and they're running them fast. It doesn't always feel like overthinking from the inside. It just feels like hesitation, like something holding her feet to the floor, even when part of her wants to move. And I say this not to let her off the hook, because honestly, sometimes women do need to be braver about this, but I say it because understanding that her stillness isn't rejection. It's fear wearing the mask of indifference. That changes how you read the situation entirely, and it should change how you respond to it too. Number two is the social script that she's running in her head. The fact that most women, even confident, self aware modern women, are still running an internal script about how attraction is supposed to unfold. And that script, whether she consciously agrees with it or not, almost always has the man making the first move. Not because she's passive, not because she's waiting to be rescued, but because somewhere in the way she was raised, in the relationships she watched growing up, in the dating experiences she's accumulated over the years, the message got wired in that a man pursuing her means he's actually interested, that his initiative is the signal she can trust. And here's what makes this genuinely complicated. Even women who would tell you they have no problem making the first move will often hesitate when the moment actually arrives, because there's a subtle emotional risk that comes with it that goes beyond just rejection. When a woman initiates, she's also stepping outside of a dynamic that feels familiar and safe to her. She's taking on a role that for many women still carries a quiet vulnerability, not because she thinks it's wrong, but because it's unfamiliar territory emotionally. It disrupts something in her that she might not even be able to fully articulate. So, what you end up with is a woman who is genuinely drawn to you, who has noticed you, who has maybe even thought about what she'd say if you came over, and she still won't cross that room. Not because the attraction isn't there, but because the internal architecture of how she experiences that attraction is still built around waiting for you to close the gap. That's not weakness. That's just the reality of how deeply those patterns run, even in women who would never describe themselves as traditional. The stare is her way of sending the signal without breaking the script she's still unconsciously following. 3. She's watching you to decide. What most men don't realize is that the stare isn't just attraction expressing itself, it's also evaluation. She's not looking at you the way you might look at a painting, just taking in the surface of it. She's reading you. And she's doing it in a way that's almost entirely unconscious, which means she probably couldn't even tell you exactly what she's looking for, but she'd know it the moment she saw it or didn't. She's watching how you carry yourself when nobody's paying attention to you, how you talk to the people around you, whether you seem comfortable in your own skin, or whether there's something slightly performative about the way you're moving through the room. Women are remarkably good at picking up on that difference, even from a distance. The guy who's genuinely relaxed reads completely differently from the guy who's trying to look relaxed, and she can feel that gap even if she can't name it. Say you're at a social event, a house party, a work function, somewhere relatively casual. She's noticed you from across the room, and what she's actually doing in those moments of looking over isn't just appreciating that you're attractive. She's watching whether you're the kind of man who seems grounded, whether you laugh naturally, or whether it looks like a performance. Whether you give the people you're talking to your full attention, or whether your eyes are constantly scanning the room for someone more interesting. All of that is information she's collecting before she'd ever consider letting you know she's noticed you. This is why presence matters so much more than most men think it does in those early pre-conversation moments. She's not just seeing you, she's sensing you. And what she's ultimately deciding, often before a single word has been exchanged, is whether you feel like someone's safe enough to be seen by. That decision happens faster than either of you would probably expect, and it happens entirely in silence. 4. You might be interesting, not a target. Now, the honest truth is that not every stare is attraction. Some of them are genuinely. And everything I've described in the previous sections applies fully in those cases, but some of them just aren't. And being able to tell the difference is actually a really important skill to develop because misreading it in either direction costs you something. Sometimes a woman is looking at you because you're interesting, because something about you caught her attention in a way that isn't necessarily romantic. Maybe the way you're dressed is unusual in a good way. Maybe you just said something that made the whole group laugh and she's still processing it. Maybe you remind her of someone. Maybe you're just a compelling person to observe and she isn't fully aware herself of why she keeps glancing over. Think about sitting in a coffee shop and noticing someone at another table who's animatedly telling a story to their friend. Big hand gestures, real energy, the kind of person who takes up space in a warm way rather than an aggressive one. You might find yourself looking over a few times, not because you're attracted to them, but because there's just something magnetic about their energy that your eyes keep drifting toward. Women do this too. Men do this. It's just human. The signals that separate curiosity from genuine interest are usually in the details. Curiosity tends to be observational. She looks, she takes it in, and her expression stays fairly neutral or mildly entertained. Attraction has a different quality to it. There's something slightly self-conscious in it. She might look away a little too quickly. She might look back when she thinks you're not watching. There's a subtle awareness in her body language that wasn't there before she noticed you. Once you know what you're looking for, the difference becomes harder to miss. 5. What she's waiting for you to do. So, after everything I've just walked you through, the fear, the social script, the evaluation, the difference between curiosity and real attraction, it all points to the same place. And that place is you, not because the pressure should all sit on your shoulders, but because in most of these situations, you are genuinely the one who holds the key to whether that moment becomes something or quietly disappears. What she's waiting for isn't a line. It's not a perfectly constructed opener that you rehearsed in the mirror before you left the house. What she's actually waiting for, even if she couldn't articulate it this clearly herself, is a man who moves toward her like he isn't auditioning, like he's not desperate for a particular outcome, but he's also not pretending he hasn't noticed her. There's a quality of calm intention that women respond to in those first moments of contact that is almost impossible to fake. Which is actually good news because it means the real version of it is far more powerful than any rehearsed version could ever be. The approach doesn't need to be elaborate. A man who walks over with relaxed eye contact, says something genuine and low pressure, and then actually listens to her response. That alone already puts him ahead of most. Because what she's feeling in that moment, if the attraction was real, is relief. The tension of that unspoken thing between you finally has somewhere to go. And when you show up without desperation, without performance, without making her feel like she's about to be pitched to, she can actually relax into the conversation instead of bracing for it. That's the move. Not the words specifically, but the energy underneath them. She's been watching you long enough to form an impression. What you do next either confirms it or quietly contradicts everything she thought she saw. Walk over like you already know which one it's going to be. Here's what I want you to take away from all of this. That one moment where she's looking and you're wondering and nothing is happening yet, that moment is not nothing. It's not ambiguous noise that you should just ignore and move on from. In a lot of cases, it's the closest thing to an open door that early attraction actually offers. And most men walk past it because they either talk themselves out of what they saw or they wait for a clearer signal that honestly she was never going to give them. She's not going to make it obvious in the way you might want her to. That's just not how this tends to work for most women. For all the reasons we've talked about today, the fear, the script she's running, the quiet evaluation happening behind those glances, none of that resolves itself on its own. It resolves when you decide to close the gap. Not aggressively, not with pressure, just with the kind of grounded intention that tells her you noticed, you're interested, and you're not going to make it weird. And if you walk over and it turns out the stare was just curiosity and the attraction isn't there, that's genuinely fine. You lose nothing by finding out. What you do lose every single time is the version of that moment where something could have started but didn't because you stayed where you were and wondered. That version has no upside. The other one at least gives you an answer. And sometimes the answer is really, really good. So stop waiting for certainty before you move. She's already looked. Now it's your turn.